Hello, everyone. Glad to have you here again with us, guys. Thank you all for joining and welcome again to this month's Dr. Jaspersoft session, where we will be talking about one of our hot feature in our latest mainstream release 8.1, report bursting in Jaspersoft. So I'm Badr Dreyfi, your Dr. Jaspersoft host based in Paris, and we have here with us today our presenter, Mehul Bamania, Senior Customer Success Architect based in London. Hi, Mehul. How are you doing?
Hey, brother. Hi, guys.
Mehul is our
You,
guest.
yeah.
Thank you, Mehul. What was that? Sorry.
No, just said glad to be here.
Thank you. Glad to have you with us, Mehul. Mehul will be our guest speaker presenting and demoing the report Burster feature. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Mehul. So for our next Dr. Jaspersoft session, which will be on April, the second Thursday of April, stay tuned for this really interesting session where we'll be talking about the best practices for upgrading your Jasper report server. This will include walking you through the prerequisites, various different upgrade options, and especially the pitfalls to avoid. So stay tuned on that one. And one last thing, please put your questions on the comment section. It's on the right of the YouTube stream. We will be monitoring it, and we'll try to get to all of your questions before the end of the session. So thank you guys again, and without further ado, I'll give you the floor, Mihol. You can go ahead.
Thank you, brother. Right. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here, as I said. So I'm going to talk a little bit about report bursting and what can be done in the mainstream release 8.1. We'll kind of go through the agenda for now quickly. So the session will be a little bit basic in terms of how to set it up and how quickly to do bursting in Jaspersoft. So we'll start with what is report bursting. We'll look at objectives, why we need to burst, what might be the possible scenarios that we can cover. And then we'll look at how to actually, what does Jaspersoft do in terms of report bursting, it's the system requirements that we need to make sure we have, how the report bursting works in Jaspersoft, and all the steps that you need to follow to configure it. It is a kind of a basic getting started tutorial, so we'll keep it simple as possible, but if there is any questions, again, just put it in the chat. And then eventually we'll do a demo or a practical session on kind of configuring the report bursting in Jaspersoft. All right, so let's go. So what is report bursting? So bursting is the process of running a report once and then dividing the results for different recipients who each might want to see a different set of data. For example, you might have a user in location A who might want to receive a separate set of data or separate set of reports to the user in location B or C and so on. So the idea of bursting is, you develop your report once and you want to be able to run it multiple times with different parameters and distribute it out to different sets of users. Obviously, you can do this currently, or you always can do this in Jaspersoft before, but you have to manually do scheduling, which means, if you have thousands of recipients, you have to create thousands of parameters, you have to create thousands of schedules, which isn't ideally a feasible thing to do. You might have different countries who might want to receive their own data in terms of, how the country is doing in some kind of analysis. So each country manager might want to have separate set of data. So obviously, again, you can schedule and run it, but you have to maintain many schedules, and it becomes unmanageable at some point. Okay, so as I was saying, it becomes unmanageable at some point when you have to do multiple schedules and maintain them. So in 8.1, Jaspersoft introduced bursting, which makes it very efficient to develop and maintain your schedules and your bursting properties. So that's kind of the objective of bursting. It's just mainly to kind of run a report for different sets of parameters. It could be thousands or millions, but configure at one point where you can configure and maintain it, and obviously set it out to distribute it to different sets of users. So, all right, let's continue. So in Jaspersoft, as I said, bursting in Jaspersoft. So previously there was no out-of-the-box support. So only thing you could do was use an external tool like Talend, which was utilizing Jaspersoft scheduling APIs to do the bursting. So it would be kind of a similar approach. But this is external tool and support is, I think, is now out of support as well. So we would be maintaining that. So in 8.1 again, we introduced bursting configurations via Jaspersoft Studio. So the aim is to kind of have it simple as possible. So you don't need anything specific. As long as you know how to develop a report, you'll be able to configure bursting. And the things you need we'll cover in the next slide. But it's just using Studio to kind of utilize Jaspersoft APIs, which will in turn in the background create REST APIs, call REST APIs to create schedules and stuff. So we can kind of configure it at one point and one place, and then be able to run it for different bursting requirements. So we'll cover that in the demo. As I said, the concept is the same as running or scheduling reports in Jasper Server. You create one report, you put it on the server, you run it, then you create another report. And when we do the demo, we'll cover this a little bit more. But the concept is simple, just running, creating reports in Studio, publishing and running. And what it allows you to do is kind of allows you to configure in one place and run it multiple times. You can create a report that configures bursting, put it on the server and just run it once. Configure it once and run it multiple times. You can also schedule the actual bursting as well. So you might want to burst every morning, for example. So you'll be able to do that as well. So let's continue to the next slide. All right. So in terms of the system requirements, this feature was introduced in 8.1. So you would need 8.1 Jaspersoft Studio and Jasper Report Server. Both of them has to be 8.1, otherwise it wouldn't work. And some prerequisites are, you should be knowing how to develop reports in Studio, and you probably have done them before, and publish and create schedules. You don't have to create schedules, but you should know how the scheduling works in Jasper Report Server. But two main things is developing reports and publishing.
Yeah, I just want to add here, Miho, that for everyone to know, the Jasper Report Server 8.1 is a mainstream version. It's our long-term support version, which is 8.0.x, does not contain the bursting for now, but we will have the bursting in our next long-term support once it's going to release. So
that's a good point.
Yeah. So yeah, for 8.1 mainstream, you go ahead and enjoy the bursting.
Yeah. All right, so I think I kind of covered a little bit, but how does it actually work? So in terms of setting up bursting in Jasper Report Server 8.1 is pretty simple. You just develop your reports as you would do in Studio. Standard, there is no difference. But what it allows you to do in the 8.1 release, there is a configuration which you can actually configure via the screen. You can just configure, which allows you to set all these different properties. So which parameter needs to be passed, which recipient, who should be receiving it, who should be emailed if it failed, and all those kind of things you can configure in the 8.1 Studio release, which then you can publish it to the server, and it will automatically run those properties. So it makes it really easy and configure in one place. You can configure entire bursting requirements for a report, or even you can configure dynamically multiple reports. This configuration is very flexible and it's very clever. You can actually dynamically pass everything, so you can it allows you to kind of configure it one place and then run it multiple times, send it multiple places wherever you want. So we'll look at that more in the details. And then finally, once you publish that, once you publish that report, you'll be able to run it on the server, which in turn runs the actual bursting as well. So it's like you're running a report on the server, which will run the burster and send it out to different people or different places. Pretty simple things, basic of Jaspersoft, I guess. But let's continue.
So the quick question here. So this will also allow me, if I have a report with multiple input control, with multiple filters, instead of going to the scheduler, and let's say I have like 40 possible options in my input control. Instead of having 40 reports scheduled in the scheduler, I'll just configure in the bursting once. one time, and it will send me the create the report and schedule the report based on all the options that I might have in the report. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the way this is implemented is it's in the concept of having a trigger and a target report. Your trigger report would be kind of the one that will retrieve the data that needs to be passed for the bursting. So, for example, you might have a table that retrieves some parameters and maybe an email ID, some input controls and some email IDs that might want to, that data should go to that user, for example. So the trigger, what we call a burster, it's what takes the data and passes on to the target report, which is the report that will be run. So as long as you have all your input control data available in the trigger query, or in a trigger data source, you'll be able to pass that on to the target report automatically.
That sounds really cool, and I believe we're gonna see this in action in your demo, right?
Yes, you will. Obviously, I don't have 40 input controls, but we'll look at the basic concepts.
Thanks.
All right. So we'll talk a little bit about what to do. So trigger and target reports development, both of these needs to be done. So trigger report would allow you to kind of retrieve the data and pass it on to the target report. The trigger might receive, trigger might retrieve, for example, 100 records. Each record you need to do bursting for target report. That can be configured in the trigger report, as I said. Target report is the one that will actually be run and sent to the user, or put it on the FTP server or a host file system or whatever. So this trigger and the target burster kind of allows us to loop through the set of data which needs to be burst, and then run the burster and send it to appropriate users or places. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. I mean, ideally, you will already have a target report developed, but if not, what we'll do in the demo is we'll create a simple target report. We'll put it on the server and run it and see how it runs, and then we'll create a trigger report and put it on the server and see how that kind of does the report bursting. Secondly, it's to kind of configure the bursting, which I kind of a little bit covered already. And then you publish all the reports to the server and you run it on the server. The good thing is this trigger report can also be scheduled. So although the trigger is scheduling the targets automatically, the trigger itself can be scheduled. So you can have a trigger running every morning that triggers the target schedules. So you can have one running every morning that will do hundreds of target reports every morning. It becomes very useful and very convenient for you to do report bursting. So I think I've covered all the theory stuff. I think we can jump onto kind of the demo. And so I will, Badr, just confirm if you can see my studio.
Not yet. No. We're still seeing your slide report bursting demo.
Okay, let's see. Should come up.
There you go.
There you
Good
go.
now.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm just going to quickly switch sharing again. All right, so I'm sharing the screen now. Okay, so most of you are probably familiar with the studio and how the simple development works. So what I've done here is I've created a simple. Let's forget about the target trigger report for now. Let's concentrate on the target report. So this is a simple report I've created. It's just a simple report with some fields that I'm displaying, and there is one parameter. Okay, so I want this report to run on a parameter, and the parameter is called month. So this report should be run for a month that's passed in. It's a simple Jasper report. If you look at the query, it's not doing anything specific. Obviously, it can be as complex as possible, and it can be as simple as possible. Either way, it's no problem. So I'll just show you quickly the query. It's just basically getting some data, passing in the month as a parameter. Okay, that's all it's doing. And I can actually run this report here, passing in some parameter, and it will run the data. So I've already ran here. For parameter number 2, if I run it for 3, you can see here month. It's running it for month 3. There you go. So just a simple report. That's my target report. This is the report that I want to burst for my sets of users, or sets of parameters. So once you have created this simple report, you can go ahead and publish this to the server. So let's do this right now. I'm going to publish this to the server.
So the use case here, Mihol, will be like, we want to burst now this report to make it, to send this to our different recipients based on different filters,
Correct. So
different months.
yeah, correct. I mean, I don't have an email server set up, but I'll show you how that can be done. What we're going to do here is basically run this report for 6 or 7 times with different parameter. Okay,
With
and
one
that parameter
configuration.
with one configuration, and then obviously we can configure if it needs to go to a particular user via email, or if it needs to go to an FTP server somewhere. All right. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to, because I already published this report, that's why it's already picked up. But obviously, if you haven't done it, you can publish it here. So I'm just going to publish it in the bursting demo, and I'm going to call it 1 so that you guys can understand what needs to be published. I already got 2 there, but let's create the 1 more there. So I'm going to create next. And it's going to ask me, there are 2 things. There's a parameter and the image, the Jaspersoft image. What do you want to do with it? So I will just overwrite for now everything. And let's go ahead and publish. I know my data source, so I will quickly select that as well, so that we get some data. And I will do a publish. Okay, that's it. That's all I've done. This is a simple thing we've published. I'm going to go back to my browser. I think I've lost my browser. Oh, there you go. You can still see my Jasper server, right, brother?
Yes, correct. We see your screen.
Good. All right. So I published my report on the server here, and you can see there's a target report 1 created. We will ignore the target report and trigger burster for now. Just so we don't get confused, I will just cut it out. Okay, so this is the report I published just now, and I can run it again, just so you guys. When I run it, it's asking for a month. Let's say if I put 4, it will run the report for month 4. Right now, let's say you want to burst this report. You want to run it for 12 months or 7 months or 6 months. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Previously, what you had to do is you had to create a schedule, passing in. You have to create 6 schedules. Each schedule would have to have parameter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then maintain that. And that would be possible. Obviously, 6 is okay; it's not a big number. But when you have 600, that becomes very problematic. So the bursting would be really helpful here. So let's try and burst this report now. Okay. So we can run this report on the server. It asks for 1 parameter. We need to pass that month. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my studio. And I've developed another report here, a simpler report, we'll call a trigger, what we call a trigger, which is a burster. And this is where the configuration for bursting happens. So it's again a simple report that takes some query. There is no parameter here because for this bursting, I don't need any parameters. Obviously, you can pass in some parameters if you want. It's just a normal report. But one thing that's available, one thing I've done here, and that is available in 8.1 of the Jaspersoft release, it's be able to right click on the scriptlet and create a bursting scriptlet. This allows you to configure your bursting properties however you want to burst. So I've created one. If I create one here, create bursting scriptlet, it will create a scriptlet here. So because I already created one, I'm just going to delete the second one. That was just to show you guys. So, and then you can right click on it and edit bursting properties. Now this feature is new. This is what we call the 8.1 feature, bursting feature. This allows you to configure your schedules that will be created in Jasper server when you run this report. Okay. So when the trigger report is run, it will create, for each record that's retrieved, it will create a schedule and run it. Okay. And each schedule can be configured separately. Obviously here is configured, each schedule is configured according to whatever you configure here. Okay. So let's say I'm creating one bursting for a report. So first thing here, it's in the option configuration, essential options. All right. So first thing here is selecting the server. Okay. You would need to define a server and connect it to the server. Obviously, you can pass these as a properties, but we wouldn't recommend because it gets a little bit more complex. I can show you how to do that as well. But you need to pass in your server profile And then this flag here will just basically tell the engine should we do bursting or not. If you set it to false, you can run the report, it won't do the bursting. If you set it to true and you run the report, the bursting will happen. So let's say I'm going to keep it to true. This is my job label for each job that will be created. And this is the report I'm running. So you can see here I've already created reports. I'm going to select this one, obviously, because we republished. So let's select this one. And that's all I need to do in this option here. Obviously, you can return the result variable, which will allow you to kind of see what the status of the schedule was, but we will not do that now. And then the next configuration on the output file option is basically what you want to do with the schedules. Okay, so you can here configure the file that needs to be created, the file name you want to pass in, what format you want to do it in. Let's do it for sake of doing it. Let's just do it for PDF for now. Okay, you can have multiple formats if you want, but I'll just select PDF. So I want to generate a PDF for each of the month, for example. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if I want to overwrite files, I can obviously set this to true. If I don't want to set it to false, if you want to have sequential timestamp in the file name, you can do that as well. And this option here is where I'm going to put it to repository, but you can put it to FTP if you want, or you can even put it to host file system. But we'll because this is simpler, we'll keep it to the repository for now. So here I can basically say output to repository to true and select the folder I want to put it to. So I'm just going to put it on my main folder, which I have. So bursting demo. Okay, those two things I've configured here. Now I don't need to configure the FTP, but if I want to put it on FTP, I can configure it here. I can also configure the run notification. So whenever this job is run, who should get the email and what the status was, I can all configure it here as well. But we won't go into that much detail for now because I don't have any email server set up, but that can be configured here. So you've configured the schedules options here. Next thing we need to configure is to pass in the parameters. So if I click on the parameters tab here, I will be able to pass in the parameters that my trigger report is retrieving and passing into my target report. So here I'm passing basically the month field from my trigger report to the parameter month of my target report. If you had multiple parameters, as Badr mentioned before, you can assign them here. So by default, you will then assign the values. But I will just quickly show you, there's nothing else here.
Yeah, so Mehul, just how did you, can you show us how did you add that parameter? Do you click on the add button there?
Yeah, so if you click on the add button, you'll be able to define the parameter name for your report. So this is the name of the target report, parameter of the target report. Mine one was called month. That's why I created month. I can just put in month here. And the value that I want to pass. You can pass in a static value, or you can have an expression and pass in parameters or fields or whatever. Okay. Everything in this configuration box is configurable as an expression. So I will come back to that in a minute. So here I can basically pass in my month field.
So the studio here shows us the fields of the target report, right? This is why we can see.
No, this is the field of the trigger report. Yeah, so that's why I want to go. Let me quickly show you the query for the trigger report first, and then it makes more sense. If I cancel this, so in my trigger report, I have a simple query. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm just retrieving all the months, all the distinct months. Yeah. Because my target report requires a month. So I'm just selecting month, okay? But this can be any query and you can pass in any, as long as you're retrieving the right amount of data for the target report, you'll be fine.
Okay, and if we had another filter in the target report, we need to, and we want to burst it as well, it needs to be on the query of the trigger report.
Correct,
so it can be
correct,
used.
Yeah. So the trigger report, it doesn't have to be SQL, it can be a file, it can be an XLS, a CSV. It just needs to retrieve right amount of data. So at the moment I'm saying, select all the months and then for all the months, run the target report. That's my aim. Yeah. So I just have one field here. And then there's my field here, just one field, no parameters. So what I'm doing is basically if this gives me 12 months, I'm going to run 12 schedules that will do a target report. Okay. I've created the simple report that's just basically putting out a message saying bursting report for the month. So for each month, he's going to which bursting is being created for which month, and then at the end I'm going to print a message saying bursting completed. If it fails, obviously this is not going to be the case, so you won't get this message, so that should be okay. So coming back to the bursting properties again, and then the parameters tab. So here what I'm saying is for each field that is retrieved from the database, my month parameter name is month for the target report. So I'm going to set the month. And bear in mind, this runs for every record that's retrieved in this trigger query. Yeah. So it's like a repetition of the detail band. Okay. So I can say basically for each month, pass the month field to the target report and burst that report. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying pass the month field to the month parameter and then run that target report for that month. And this is the basic configuration, but in the complex configuration, you can pass in multiple parameters. You can, here, everything here is basically expression definable. So you can actually, you don't even have to hard code this. You can actually pass this as a parameter or as a field as well. So it knows what to run instead of hard coding it to one report. Yeah.
Is that parameter name, Mehul, should match the parameter name in the target report?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Otherwise, it won't map the parameter. So in my target report here, I have a parameter called month. That's the one I'm passing in from the trigger report.
Got
okay.
It. Yeah.
So I mean, as I said, this can be as complex as you can imagine. Everything is expression defined. So let me not publish that now. So in a best case scenario, you might have everything coming from a parameter or field. Yeah, you can have a table, or Excel sheet, or a SQL table that retrieves all these information dynamically and then runs the bursting dynamically. And so it's fully configurable. All right, so let's see you've done your trigger report as well. So what I'm going to do now, ideally, I will just turn it off in the first instance. Okay. And I'm going to publish this report to the server as well. Right, so it's taking a little bit of time. All right, so let's see. So I'm going to select my server where I published my target report, and I'm going to call it trigger report _1 as well. So we differentiate there. Okay. I'm going to select the same data source because my data comes from the same data source. If you have a different one, you can do that as well. And I'm going to finish it. Okay. So now I have on the server, if I go back to the server, I should have two reports, trigger and a target, right? So target is the one we run with the parameter, and the trigger is the one that will run that. But at the moment, if I run the trigger report, it won't run any of the bursting, purely because I've turned the bursting off. So if I run this report, it will just display whatever it's displayed in my trigger report. There you go, just saying, obviously this is what I put it in my report. So saying bursting report for months 7, 1, 6. These are the months retrieved from the database. For each of these, it should have run the target report, but because I've turned it off, it wouldn't have run. And then at the end, it says bursting completed. This is just for a message to the user. This is not mandatory or anything. So if I go back, you will see in my output to repository folder, which I selected here in the bursting. This folder here, bursting demo, output to repository is true. It's empty at the moment because I didn't enable the burster. Okay, so I will go back to the server, so studio, and I will enable my burster by enabling this property here. Okay, and I click OK. I'm going to save it and publish it to the server again. So this time, every time this report is now run on the server, it will do bursting for all those months. Okay. So if I run this now, you will see a bunch of files in this folder because that's the folder I defined as a file to. So I'm expecting to see 7 PDFs here, or number of PDFs here with each with the file name of the month name. So let's try to run it. I'm going to try and run it. This time is running the actual. Okay, so looks like looks like we got an error. I just need to check what the error is. Let me just quickly check on Studio, the properties. You can still see my Studio, right? Oh, okay. So here this is still referencing the older server, whereas older report, we've changed it to _1 and we removed the old one. So I'm just going to change this and republish it, and hopefully this time it should be okay. I'm going to republish it. Just going to double check the properties again. So what we have here is enable to true now. So now when I run the report, it should kind of burst the reports and produce 7 PDFs as we only have PDF available here. You can tick any other formats and it will create that format for you, but it will just run it for PDF for now. There is no other configuration set except the parameters. So let's try it. Publish this to the server. Yeah, better.
Is the trigger burster report was actually referencing the target report that does not exist, right?
Yeah, so because we moved it out and we republished it with a new name, that's why. So let's go back to, yeah.
Any changes for the trigger burster, we need to republish it to the server again so we can.
Yeah, so because I just did that, usually if you make some changes and just press save, it will ask if you want to publish, and I just did yes. So that should be published now. So let's go back and run it on the server again. Just before we run it, so you can see my bursting demo folder is currently empty. And this is the folder I've set to, sorry, not empty. There is no PDF or Excel files here. And this is the folder I've set to kind of store my bursted files. So I'm going to run the burster again. It should produce 7 PDF if it doesn't fail, hopefully. All right. So we have these months that it's going to run it for 7152463. So let's go back and see if the PDFs have been produced. There you go. Okay, so it's produced 7 PDFs, each PDF with the month, the custom file name for each parameter. Obviously, you can configure the file name however you like. And you can see here, this is for month 1, only data for month 1 all the way. Yeah, if I check the second file, it will only be for month 2. So the idea is, I can, if I go back to my Studio, I can configure where month 1 should go, or who should go to, and where month 2 should go to. And if everything is dynamic here, I can actually configure the notifications according to whatever the data is retrieved from the trigger query. I can pass it on to, or email it to anyone who's appropriate for number 1 and number 2, or month 1 and month 2. Obviously, at the moment, I'm just putting in the file system. You can also upload it to the FTP if you want to configure it here. And then you just, as soon as you configure it, it will kind of automatically put it on the FTP. You can disable the output to repository after if you want to put it on FTP, or you can leave it both. Doesn't matter. All right, so there are a couple of options here about overwriting files and sequential timestamp file names. One thing you got to be careful about is if you're going to use the sequential timestamp, we need to make sure that you put the seconds because if the schedules are triggered at the same minute, it will overwrite the files. So we need to make sure the seconds are there, possibly milliseconds as well if you want to be extra safe. And then there isn't any other properties I wanted to kind of show you guys at the moment. But there's an advanced section here, which kind of just puts everything into an XML format. There are some custom properties you can set, but we don't need to go into details for that right now.
Mehul, for the timestamp, naming, in case you have the file name that include the parameter as you're doing in this use case, you don't have to worry about the timestamp pattern seconds because it's always gonna be different.
Correct.
Yeah. Every month filter is gonna be different.
Yeah. Correct. But if you might have 1 month running today and 1 month running tomorrow, for example. If you want both of them to be separate, then you can make use of this.
Yeah. And you said we can also you can send notification for month 1 and different notification for month 2.
Yes, you should be able to do that here in the run notification. You can send whoever you want to send it to, and this can come dynamically as a record in the query
Oh,
results. Yeah.
yeah.
So then you can set that accordingly. And here, if you want to basically receive any job that fails or succeeds, you can put the success message here. But ideally, we don't want to do it at this level, because if you have 100 bursting happening, you'll get 100 notifications. So what you really want to do is to actually set a schedule at the server level for the burster, and then receive the notification that way. So you only receive it once. So you would actually schedule this report to run every morning, which will then do the bursting every morning. Yeah, and then if this schedule fails, you get a one notification saying, the schedule failed, rather than each individual schedules.
Yeah, and anyway, behind the scenes, when the trigger burster is when you run the trigger burster, the target report is being scheduled automatically, and we can actually see it, right? If you
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So if let's try one again. So I'm just going to delete our PDFs that we created, so that it's empty folder again. And what I'm also going to do is launch the admin console in the new tab. Sorry. So I'll just put this tab on the side so we can see what's happening. So if I run the burster again, this time it's going to run the target report 7 times again. But what you will see here, or even in the schedules, we won't have time to go through schedule. But if you go to the admin console, you'll be able to see the schedules that are running and that are created automatically. So let me just run this, and then I'll quickly come back and refresh this page. I'll run this, and then I quickly come back here. What you will see is different schedules being created. You see here?
And can you maximize this view?
Yeah. So I want to refresh again, otherwise it will disappear. But some of them disappeared because they completed. And the schedule that gets created by the burster, it's a temporary schedule. It's not a schedule that's saved. So that's why you see it disappearing. It's a run now schedule. But you can see these two are running. They actually completed. If I refresh it, they'll disappear. But it's the schedules that are created. You see here, if I click on edit, probably won't be able to find it. Let's see. Yeah, it's because they've already removed. I want to go favorites. Yeah, because they're already gone. That's why we can't find it. But you will see it. You saw the schedules that were there, and then if you go back here, you will see the PDFs also created again in the repository. There you go. They created 7 schedules, temporary schedules. Each schedule created 1 PDF file. And as I said, you can change. You can have multiple formats if you want, or you can have one format. It's up to you. And so the thing with this first thing is it's really configurable. It's however you want. Everything's expression defined, as I said. So whenever you need to, if you want to set up a dynamic approach to kind of bursting multiple reports or multiple parameters to multiple reports, all that can be possible here. And yeah, so I think this is what I wanted to demo. I don't think I have anything else. So Badr, back to you.
Yeah, maybe you can share back your screen, the slides. Maybe you can just go through those references.
All right, so okay, so we did the demo, and these are some of the references here. I have added an additional link at the bottom in the additional section for the report bursting wiki article, which will be very useful if anybody wants to try out bursting. I think the rest are standard links.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mio. If you can go back to the last slide. Yeah. Okay. Great. So thank you, Mio, for this great and rich presentation. And please, everyone, if you have any more questions related to this session, just shoot us an email to Dr. Jaspersoft, tibco.com, or send your question in our community website as well by tagging Dr. Jaspersoft report bursting session. Thank you so much, and Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.
Great. Thank you, guys. Bye.